Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're taking a look at memory leak developers. These are the folks who work behind the scenes to keep your software running smoothly. We're talking about those people who tackle those annoying memory leaks that cause, crashes and slowdowns and basically all the stuff that makes you want to throw your laptop out the window. And if you're thinking, hey, I need one of those wizards on my team, but you have no idea where to start, head over to theperfectdeveloper.com. They have this really awesome 5-question quiz. It helps you figure out exactly what kind of developer you actually need and then where to find them. It's like having a tech recruiter right in your pocket.
That's right.
All right, so let's get down to business. What exactly is a memory leak developer?
Well, you know how a leaky faucet wastes water and drives up your water bill? A memory leak is kind of like that for software. It's basically wasted memory that the program isn't using anymore, but it's still holding on to. Over time, this can really bog things down and even cause the whole system to crash.
So memory leak developers are like digital plumbers then. They come in and they fix those leaks.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to think about it. But they aren't just fixing pipes. They're digging deep into the code, figuring out why that leak is happening in the first place. It's like detective work. They use special tools and their deep knowledge of how memory actually works to track down the source of the leak and then patch it up.
Oh, wow. So it's not just about, knowing how to code, but it's understanding these deeper low-level aspects of how the software is interacting with the system's memory. So what would you say separates a memory leak developer from a general programmer?
It's all about the tools and the mindset. Memory leak developers are very fluent in what we call low-level programming languages, things like C, C++E, and sometimes even assembly language. These languages are closer to the hardware, and it allows them to analyze how the software is using memory at the most basic level.
Okay, I'm starting to get a sense of the skills here. What kind of industries are looking for these memory leak masters? Is it top secret government stuff? Are they designing the next generation of self-driving cars?
Well, actually, both of those are possibilities. But really, any industry that needs high performance, super stable software, they rely heavily on memory leak developers. Gaming and VR are big ones. You can't have that smooth, immersive experience if the software is always leaking memory and causing lag. Finance is another one. Think high-frequency trading, where even milliseconds matter. Then there are things like embedded systems and medical devices. Anything that demands rock-solid reliability.
I'm seeing a pattern here. Speed and stability are the name of the game.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that translates into some pretty good salaries for these folks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everyone wants to know, what's the earning potential here?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Their expertise is very valuable. Theperfectdeveloper.com actually has some great data on this, and it really depends on location and experience. In North America, a skilled memory leak developer can make anywhere from $100,000 to $150,000 a year. Europe tends to be a bit lower. And then places like Asia, particularly India and the Philippines, have a lower cost of living. So salaries there might start around $20,000.
Wow. Quite a range. So you've got options depending on your budget and project needs.
Yeah.
But let's say you've decided, okay, I need to bring on a memory leak developer on my team. What are the different ways to go about doing that? Do you hire full-time, part-time, or is it more you call them when things go wrong?
Well, that's where things get interesting, and theperfectdeveloper.com has some insightful guidance on this. If you're constantly working with applications where performance is super important, having a full-time memory leak developer on your staff just makes a lot of sense. They become part of the team, and they know your systems really well. They can jump on issues quickly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But what if you're a smaller company? Or you only need this kind of expertise every once in a while?
Well, then you've got options like part-time arrangements, or even outsourcing to a freelancer or an agency, one that specializes in memory leak detection and repair. That can be way more cost-effective if you're a startup or you just need help with a specific project.
So there's a lot of flexibility there. Now, I'm sure some of our listeners are thinking, okay, couldn't I save some money by hiring a developer overseas? What are the pros and cons of going that route?
It's definitely something to think about. There's a lot of talent in countries with lower costs of living, and with remote work becoming so common, geographic boundaries aren't as much of an issue anymore, but there are trade-offs to consider.
Yeah, there are always trade-offs. What are we talking about here?
Communication and time zones, those can be big factors. If you need someone who can hop on a call immediately or work closely with your team in real time, having them in a similar time zone can be really valuable.
Okay, so location is definitely something to think about. But let's back up a bit. If you're ready to start searching for that elusive memory leak developer, where do you even begin?
Well, the perfectdeveloper.com is a fantastic resource. Beyond that, freelance platforms like Upwork or TopTal are great places to start. You can specifically search for developers with memory management expertise. You could also check out tech job boards like Stack Overflow jobs or GitHub jobs.
So it's kind of a treasure hunt.
Huh?
But with the right tools and resources, you can find your perfect memory management match. But let's say you've got a stack of resumes from all these potential candidates. What are some interview questions that can help you separate the memory masters from the, let's just say the less experienced folks?
That's where the real fun begins.
Yeah.
It's not just about finding someone who can technically do the job. You want someone who's a good fit for your team, someone who can communicate effectively, who's passionate about solving these memory mysteries.
All right, so we're not just looking for technical skills, but we're looking for someone who can collaborate and be a valuable part of the team.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of those technical questions, what are some good ones to ask?
Here's one that I like. Ask them to explain the difference between stack and heap memory. It seems basic, but you'd be surprised how many developers struggle with it.
Stack versus heap. To be honest, I'm a little fuzzy on that myself. Could you give us a quick explanation for our listeners who might be in the same boat?
Absolutely. Imagine you're building a tower of blocks. The stack is like a neat, orderly stack of blocks. You can only add or remove blocks from the top. The heap, on the other hand, is like a big jumbled pile of blocks. You can add or remove them from anywhere. In a computer's memory, the stack is used for temporary data, like variables in a function, while the heap is used for more dynamic data that needs to stick around longer.
That's a really good analogy. So if a candidate can clearly explain the difference between stack and heap memory, that's a good sign.
Exactly. It shows that they understand some of the basic concepts of memory management. But you can go even further. Ask them to give you an example of how a memory leak could happen in each type of memory, or how they would go about debugging a leak in each case. You want to see if they can apply their knowledge to real-world situations.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
Right, so we've got the technical questions down, but what about those all-important soft skills? Communication, problem-solving, teamwork.
Yeah.
How do you assess those during an interview?
One technique I like to use is to present them with a hypothetical scenario. Describe a situation where there's a suspected memory leak and ask them to walk you through how they would approach it. Listen carefully to how they communicate their thought process. Are they clear and concise? Do they ask good questions? Do they consider different possibilities?
So it's not just about getting the right answers, but it's about having the right approach.
Precisely. Remember, you're not just hiring a coder, you're hiring a problem solver. You want someone who's curious, persistent, and isn't afraid to get into the code and really get their hands dirty.
All right, so we talked about all the good stuff, the skills, the questions to ask, but let's switch things up. What are some red flags, those warning signs that maybe this person isn't the memory leak maestro you're looking for? What should people watch out for?
Vague answers are a big one. If they can't explain complex things clearly or give specific examples from their experience, that's a major red flag. And of course, a lack of knowledge of basic debugging tools is another obvious concern. These tools are so important for them.
Vague answers, no tool knowledge, got it. Anything else?
Pay attention to their attitude. Are they excited about solving memory problems? Do they seem genuinely curious about how things work at that low level? Or do they seem bored or dismissive? You want someone who is passionate about this stuff, not just going through the motions.
That's a really good point. Passion is contagious, and you want someone who's going to bring that energy to the whole team. Okay, so we've covered a ton here. We've talked about what memory leak developers do, why they're important, and how to find the right one for your team. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought. Memory management is not a static field. It's constantly evolving.
It is. What I think is so fascinating is considering how all these practices will evolve as technology changes. What new challenges and opportunities might arise for these developers? Will quantum computing change everything we know about memory? Will AI be able to automatically detect and fix leaks before they even happen? It's such an interesting time to be in this field.
For sure. So if you're looking for a career that's both challenging and rewarding, if you're passionate about diving deep into how software works, maybe becoming a memory leak developer is for you. And remember, if you need help finding the perfect developer for any project, no matter how big or small, head over to theperfectdeveloper.com and try their 5-question quiz. It's the easiest way to connect with all the top tech talent out there. Stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive into the world of memory leak developers. We'll explore even more about this exciting and really important field.
Sounds good. Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about how the role of memory leak developers is evolving and how this impacts the skills they need to be successful.
Yeah, it's like the tech world is constantly leveling up. These
Yeah.
developers need to keep up. So what are some of those like emerging skills that are becoming more and more important these days?
One area that's getting really hot is cloud computing. As more and more applications move to the cloud, memory leak developers have to understand how to diagnose and fix leaks in those environments. It's a whole different world compared to those traditional systems.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cloud environments are so complex. It's not just about the code, but how that code interacts with the whole cloud infrastructure.
Exactly. And then there are things like containerization and microservices. These are becoming more popular ways to build and deploy software, but they also create new problems for memory management.
So it's not just about fixing leaks in a single application anymore, but it's about understanding how those leaks affect an entire system of interconnected services.
You got it. And this is where those soft skills we talked about before become super important. Memory leak developers need to be able to communicate well with other teams, explain complex technical issues in a way that everyone understands, and then work together on solutions.
So they need to be like tech diplomats,
Yeah.
bridging that gap between the code and the rest of the organization.
That's a great way to put it. But it's not just communication. They also have to be adaptable and able to learn new tech quickly. The world of memory management is always changing, so they need to be okay with stepping outside their comfort zone and trying new tools and techniques.
So it's not just about being really good at the code, but about being good at learning.
Absolutely. Now, shifting gears a little, let's talk about actually finding and hiring these talented people. ThePerfectDeveloper.com says it's really important to ask the right questions when you're interviewing people.
Right, we touched on that earlier,
Yeah.
but let's dive a little deeper. Are there any specific questions that can really help you figure out a candidate's experience and problem-solving skills when it comes to memory leaks?
For sure. Here's a question that I like to use. It's scenario-based. Imagine you're working on an app that's randomly crashing. The logs show that there might be a memory leak. How would you go about investigating and solving this?
Okay, that's a good one. It's not just about knowing definitions. It's about showing how they think and how they would actually handle a problem.
Exactly. As they're explaining their approach, listen for a few important things. Do they have a system for debugging memory issues? Are they familiar with common memory profiling tools? Can they explain what they're thinking in a clear and concise way?
It's like you're looking for a detective, someone who can not only solve the case, but also explain their findings really well.
Exactly. Beyond the technical questions, it's also important to see how enthusiastic and passionate they are about this kind of work. Do they seem excited to tackle these memory mysteries? Do they light up when they talk about getting into the code and finding those leaks?
Passion is definitely a plus. You want someone who's going to be engaged and not just going through the motions.
Absolutely. Now, before we move on, I want to talk about something that comes up a lot with memory management: garbage collection.
Ooh, garbage collection. That sounds interesting. It's like taking out the trash, right?
Yeah.
But how does it actually work? And why is it important for memory leak developers to understand it?
That's a great question. So basically, garbage collection is a way for programming languages to automatically manage memory. It's like having a little robot that cleans up the memory that's not being used. This helps prevent memory leaks, but it's not perfect.
So even with garbage collection, leaks can still happen.
Yeah, unfortunately. Garbage collection can be really good, but it has its limitations. It can sometimes miss objects that aren't being used, especially if there are circular references in the code. That's why it's still super important to have memory leak developers. They can analyze the code and find those leaks, even in environments with garbage collection.
So garbage collection is helpful, but it's not a replacement for human expertise.
Exactly. And this shows something really important. Memory management isn't just about fixing things after they break. It's also about designing software in a way that avoids leaks in the first place.
So it's like preventative medicine for software.
I like that. And it's becoming more and more important as software gets more complex. Now let's shift our focus to the future of memory management. ThePerfectDeveloper.com talks about how important it is to understand how new tech is going to affect this field.
Right, we talked about this a little earlier, but let's go a little deeper. What are some of the biggest trends that you see changing the future of memory management?
One of the most exciting and maybe even disruptive trends is quantum computing. Quantum computers have the potential to revolutionize a lot of things, but they also create new challenges for memory management.
How so?
Oh.
Are quantum computers more likely to have memory leaks? Or is it something about how they process info?
It's both. Quantum computers use quantum mechanics, which means they work totally differently than regular computers. The way they store and process info is just different, so the ways we manage memory now might not work.
Wow. So it's not just about changing algorithms. It's about creating whole new approaches to memory management, specifically for quantum computing.
Exactly. And this is where things get really cool. We're talking about uncharted territory, a whole new frontier for memory leak developers.
It's like they're pioneers.
Yeah, and it's not just quantum computing. AI and machine learning are also changing memory management in big ways.
Interesting. So are we talking about AI that can find and fix memory leaks automatically?
We're getting there. AI is already being used to look at code and find potential memory issues early on. This can save developers a ton of time and headaches. And as AI gets even better, we'll probably see even more advanced tools. Tools that can not only find leaks, but also suggest or even fix them automatically.
So the role of the memory leak developer might change from being a code detective to being more of a code strategist, working with AI to make sure that memory management is part of the software from the very beginning.
Exactly. And this brings us to a really important point. The future of memory management isn't just about tech. It's about people.
Right. It's about the people who are always pushing the limits. And speaking of brilliant minds, I'm curious, how does someone become a memory leak developer? Is there a specific degree for that? Or is it more of a self-taught thing?
It's a little bit of both. There are some master's programs that focus on software performance and memory management, but a lot of memory leak developers come from a computer science background and then specialize through their work and by constantly learning.
So it's a combination of education, experience, and that desire to keep learning that we talked about.
Exactly. And theperfectdeveloper.com has great resources for people who want to be memory leak developers. They have articles, interviews, and even a forum where people can connect and talk about their experiences.
That's a great resource. So if you're interested in memory management and you want a career in this field, be sure to check out theperfectdeveloper.com. Join us for the last part of this deep dive. We'll talk about more ways to find the best memory leak developers and how to help them succeed on your team. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the world of memory leak developers. We've talked about the skills, the challenges, and the future trends. But now let's get practical. How do you actually find and hire these coding ninjas for your team?
It's not just about checking off boxes on a resume. You want someone who fits in with your team, someone who can communicate well, someone who's really into solving those memory mysteries.
Right. It's about finding the perfect fit. So let's say you've done some initial screening and you've got a few promising candidates. What are some ways to really dig deep during interviews and make sure you're finding the best of the best?
Theperfectdeveloper.com talks a lot about looking beyond just the technical skills. Of course, experience with languages like C, C++A, and Rust is important. But you also want to look at their problem-solving skills and how they approach debugging.
How do you do that? How do you get a sense of how they think, not just whether they can use the right jargon?
One good technique is to give them a real-world problem, something they might actually face on the job.
Okay.
Like you could describe a situation where an application is having performance issues, maybe because of a memory leak. Ask the candidate to walk you through how they would investigate and figure out what's wrong.
I like that. It's like a mini case study, right? You're not just testing what they know, but how they use that knowledge.
Exactly. And as they're explaining what they do, pay attention to a few things. Do they have a systematic way of approaching the problem? Are they asking good questions? Are they thinking about different possibilities?
So you're looking for someone who's not just a coder, but a detective, a problem solver.
Exactly. And another good way to assess their skills is to ask them about a time they successfully fixed a really tricky memory leak. Have them walk you through the steps, the tools, the challenges, and how they overcame them.
That's a great way to see their real-world experience and how they handle pressure.
Right. And as they're describing their experience, listen for their enthusiasm and passion. Do they seem excited about the technical stuff? Do they sound proud of what they accomplished?
So it's not just about hiring a set of skills, but a person with drive.
Absolutely. And theperfectdeveloper.com really emphasizes that. They have a whole section on their site about helping companies find developers who are not only good technically, but also a good fit for the team culture.
That's so important. You could have the best developer in the world, but if they don't work well with the team, it's going to be a problem.
It will. And that's why it's so important to really get to know the candidates, figure out what motivates them, how they work, and what their values are.
Okay, so we talked about interviews, but what about after you've hired someone? How do you help your new memory leak developer succeed? What are some things to focus on in those first few weeks?
One of the most important things is to be clear about what the company wants to achieve with memory management. What are the key metrics? What are the limits for memory usage? What are the procedures for reporting and fixing leaks?
So it's about making sure everyone is on the same page from the beginning.
Exactly. And it's also important to give them the tools and support they need. That means access to the right tools, documentation, and training.
Right. You can't expect them to work miracles without the right tools.
You can't. Another important thing is to create a culture of collaboration and knowledge sharing. Memory leaks often involve different parts of the system, so the memory leak developer needs to be able to work well with other teams, like development, QA, and operations.
So they're kind of like the center of a wheel connecting all these different parts of software development.
That's a great way to put it. It shows how important communication and teamwork are.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to go back to something we talked about earlier, the future of memory management. What are some final thoughts for our listeners as they think about this exciting and changing field?
I think the main takeaway is this. Memory management isn't just a technical problem, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to push boundaries, come up with creative solutions, and build software that's both powerful and efficient.
I love that. It's not just about fixing things. It's about shaping the future of software.
It is. And if you're passionate about technology, if you like solving puzzles, if you want to make software better, then this field might be for you.
Totally. And remember, if you're looking to hire great memory leak developers, or if you're a developer yourself, check out theperfectdeveloper.com. They have a ton of resources, including their awesome 5-question quiz that can help you with memory management and find the perfect match. So there you have it, our deep dive into the world of memory leak developers. We've talked about a lot, from technical skills to soft skills, current challenges, and future possibilities. We hope you found this journey useful and inspiring.